Here's a quick overview of how you can use a Midas indicator to consider different trading levels. The basic idea is to launch the curve from an important pivot. Once you've done that, you want to then calibrate the lower and upper channel lines to additional pivots. Typically you'll start that out by putting it at the low of this pivot low, and then each pivot that is formed, it could be a fractal, typically I'll use a fractal, that is formed on the way up is a potential support or resistance curve going out into the future. You can see here that we had a pivot, we had dynamic resistance as we touched on the curve there, and then it held support in through here, support, it broke through in here, we just gapped right back above it, got below it, it had resistance. So you want to be monitoring anytime you start approaching one of these curves. And again, you can see how this area right in here turned into support, close to resistance in here, some porosity, resistance in there, and then support, and again resistance in here, resistance, found support. Pretty self-explanatory. In relation to this trend, this is kind of the primary curve. I mean, really the best entry points in here would have been right in there off of this. However, if we had gotten a little more aggressive with this curve, what you can do is when you have a pullback like this that continues on, you can actually launch a curve from that point. So you can see that's holding support nicely in here, and then calibrating it to the low of this move down would have given us this same support area as well. It's just that we would have had more opportunity off of the initial curve right in here. And you can see these calibrated upper channels are still providing support and resistance nicely. So we have a test and we start having a move up. You can go ahead and add additional curves up in this area. So you can see how this is providing support zones. Obviously we're wanting to pay attention to. They're dynamic, so it's not just your horizontal lines from previous pivot highs and lows, which is pretty typical. It's not quite the same as just a regular trend line. And well, for instance, I mean, a trend line in this spot right here, you know, would have had us looking at this point right in here. Not a bad area to be paying attention. It's testing the primary curve as well right in here, but this trend line would have given us no indication of what was happening right in here in terms of this support zone. And here's just another example real quick. We're launching it from this curve point up in here, and you can see how nicely this test was contained by that resistance area. And then calibrating the lower channel as we created new lows, and then had a little bit of a bounce off it. If we calibrated in here, you can see how nicely it's holding support right in there, support, and we break, and then we have a small test and of resistance right up into that lower channel as well. And then here you can see we're testing into it, and we just gap above it, and well, there's so much strength that we don't quite pull back into it, but you can see how close that came right in here before rallying up to this resistance area.